Summer Crossing. Hello. Welcome to the Wednesday morning live stream from Dulcimer Crossing. I'm Erin May, and I will be with you for the next half hour or so, and we're going to talk about bluegrass on the Mountain Dulcimer. I'll be here actually this week and next week, and so we're going to do bluegrass 2 weeks in a row. I'll talk about bluegrass accompaniment this week and bluegrass lead playing next week, give you some ideas and strategies for playing along in a bluegrass kind of jam or style. The it's the thing that I learned to do first. It's where I feel most comfortable as a musician is at bluegrass festivals, jams, events, and in that genre, I feel like I most fluently speak the musical language of bluegrass, and so I do that on the mountain dulcimer. And so the dulcimer is my instrument, and bluegrass is the genre where I feel really comfortable. So I'm excited to talk bluegrass with you. I'm just going to double check right now to make sure the feed is running. I am monitoring the comments on the Dulcimer Crossing page right now. So if you are seeing this on the Dulcimer Crossing Facebook page, so if you are seeing this on my Erin May Music Facebook page or on YouTube or Vimeo right now, I will go back and look at your questions and comments and send answers or address them next week. But if you want to ask questions live, check the Dulcimer Crossing Facebook page. That's where I am watching the chat. So, I don't want the sound. Okay, got it. We are good to go. All right, so let's talk bluegrass. Bluegrass as a genre is sort of halfway in between jazz and old time, I like to say. So a lot of the influences as far as songs and tunes and repertoire come from old time music, which has strong Appalachian influence culture and a lot of Irish and sort of Celtic influence, a lot of African American influence as well. So you kind of bring all of that together and you combine that with the ability for musicians to take solos. So, right at the time that bluegrass was born, so was individual amplification of instruments. So we had microphones and we had sound systems and recording technology that allowed us to begin to amplify one instrument at a time. And so, as that's happening, you also have then instruments taking an individual solo. Before that, in all of your sort of musical styles, you have all the instruments playing together all the time. So you have sort of a wall of sound. You're creating a lot of sound so that the instruments can be heard, so that the dancers can dance along, or you can really hear the tunes clearly. And so bluegrass is the beginning of sort of pulling back away from that. And so now you have each instrument has a role for accompaniment and a role for taking a lead. So you don't have lead instruments and rhythm instruments anymore. Every instrument is doing both. And so in studying bluegrass, you got to kind of learn some things about playing the rhythm or the accompaniment, and you got to learn some things about playing the solo or the lead. So we're going to talk about the rhythm part today. I'm going to adjust a couple things here, switch camera so you can see the dulcimer really clearly. Perfect. So the first thing to know about bluegrass accompaniment is that every song, has some chords to it. And the chords of bluegrass are like every folk genre. They tend to be based in the 1, 4, and 5 chords of the key that you're playing in. So if a song is in the key of D, then the 1 chord is going to be D. And then we count to get to the 4 and 5 chords. So D, E, F, G, and A gives us the 5 chord. D, G, A. So D is the 1. You can play it open, but one of the things that happens in bluegrass music with dulcimers joining in is that we actually make too much noise. Both mountain and hammer dulcimers have this problem. We make too much noise. And you may be thinking to yourself, but mountain dulcimers are really quiet instruments. So how could we be making too much noise? And the answer is that we tend to go like this. And there's actually no space in that. The sound just keeps going and going and going and going. And we play our bum ditties and our open strings drone, and it's making too much noise. So one of the things that is really great to do is stop the sound sometimes. So on the mountain dulcimer, a way to do that is by playing chords that cover all 3 strings and then making them staccato or creating a chop sound. So I am now playing a D chord at frets 4 on the bass, 3 on the middle, 2 on the melody, and my dulcimer is tuned to D, A, D. So this is I call it X shape. Some people call it slant shape D chord with the highest fretted note on the bass string. So the highest number I'm playing is the bass string, not the melody string. So 4 is the bass, 3 is the middle, 2 is the melody. And then if I want to make that sound staccato, what I do is press down on the strings when I want the sound to ring. And then when I want the sound to stop, I stop pressing on the strings. So it's a very subtle lifting up, but my fingers never lift off the strings. My fingers are always touching the strings. They're either touching the strings and not pressing, or touching the strings and pressing. So when I want the sound to ring, I press. When I want the sound to stop ringing, I stop pressing. So try some chop chords with me on a D chord. All right, so we got the chop going, but that's really boring, right? So to make it a little bit more interesting, but not more noisy, a nice thing to do is play the bass string by itself in between each chop. So you play bass, chop, bass, chop, bass, chop, bass, chop, bass, chop. So the note we're playing on the bass string is beat 1, and then the chop is beat 2. Then we play the bass string on beat 3, and we chop again on beat 4. So we play 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. That's like 90% of what you need to know. Good, solid start here. Bass and chop. And then it goes faster because it's bluegrass, and bluegrass likes to go fast. And now is the time when I name for you that I am an in strummer. That's my dominant natural direction to come in. So when I am doing this bass chop series, I am picking the bass string in towards me and letting it ring. And then I do the chop as an outstroke away from me. So I go in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. That gives me a nice strong outstroke on the chop, but doesn't require me to go out, 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 which requires a double movement, out, 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 right? So if I can go in, out, I can go really fast. All right, now we got to figure out how to change chords. So this is a good D chord to use for bluegrass, this 4-3-2. If I want to go from D then to the 4 chord, which is a G, most of us learn to play an 0-1-3 chord as our first G chord. But again, we have open strings in this, and it can get too drony and harder to chop. And so I like to use a bar chord at 3-3-3. And when I go from 4-3-2 to 3-3-3, I think about that as meeting up with my middle finger on the middle string. So if I have my index finger on 4, my middle finger on 3, and my ring finger at 2 when I play the D chord, then I bring all of my fingers to meet up with my middle finger at the 3rd fret. So all 3 fingers are there. And then I go back to D. And then I go to the 5 chord is an A. And again, most of us learn to play the 5 chord as 1-0-1. But again, open strings. So instead of playing 1-0-1 for my A chord, I'm going to play a bar chord at the 4th fret. And that's also an A chord. And when I go from my D chord, the 1 chord, to the A chord, the 5 chord, I think of it as all my fingers meeting up with my index finger at the highest fret. So all of these chords are sort of connected by a note that stays the same. From the 1 to the 4 is meeting in the middle, and from the 1 to the 5 is meeting at the highest fret. So keeping that in mind is going to help me when I start to change keys later. So let's do a chorus of Rollin' in My Sweet Baby's Arms. So we're going to go from a D chord to an A chord to a D chord to a G chord to a D to an A to a D. And if you're not sure, you can watch my fingers right here. I'll be moving, but I'm also going to move my head side to side. So if you see me lean, that's when the chord is changing. I'll lean from the 1 chord is straight ahead to the 4 chord, meeting in the middle, is leaning toward the outside of your screen. And then the 5 chord is leaning toward the middle of your screen and going to the highest fret, the 4th fret. Okay? Rolling in my sweet baby's arms, rolling in my sweet baby's arms, gonna lay around the shack till the mail train gets back, rolling in my sweet baby's arms, rolling in my sweet baby's arms, rolling in my sweet baby's arms, gotta lay around the shack till the mail train gets back, rolling in my sweet baby's arms. Yay! You played a bluegrass song. That's a great place to start. All right. So the thing about bluegrass, though, is that we don't just stick to the key of D. In fact, you don't even just stick to the key of D and G and A, though those keys are common. So we got to figure out how to know what chords we're going to need no matter what key we're in. And that's where the system of thinking of your chords by number, the 1 and 4 and 5, is really helpful. Another great strategy for the mountain dulcimer is to know your bar chords up and down the dulcimer, because bar chords function as major or minor chords. And if you know the name of the note on the bass and melody string, that is also the name of the chord. So when I play my dulcimer all open, that's a D chord, right? If I play all at the 1st fret, now it's an E. All at the 2nd fret is F sharp. All at the 3rd fret is G. All at the 4th fret is A. The 5th fret is B. The 6th fret is C. 6.5 is C sharp. 7 is D. Then it all starts over again, repeats itself in the higher octave. So we were using those bar chords, the G and the A bar chord, just a minute ago when we were playing Rollin' in My Sweet Baby's Arms. But we can also use those bar chords to play in other keys. So if we wanted to play Rollin' in My Sweet Baby's Arms in the key of A instead, we could think of A is going to be our 1 chord. So we find our bar chord for A. It's at the 4th fret. And then you can even use bar chords to figure out what other chords you need. by counting. So A is 1, B would be 2, C's at 6s would be 3, D is going to be 4, and then E is going to be 5. So I can use a bar chord at 4, I can use a bar chord at 7, and a bar chord at 8 to play my 1, 4, and 5 chords. So let's prove it and sing Rollin' in My Sweet Baby's Arms in A. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms, rollin' in my sweet baby's arms, gonna lay around the shack till the mail train gets back. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. One more. Oh, rollin' in my sweet baby's arms, rollin' in my sweet baby's arms, gonna lay around the shack till the mail train gets back. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. This process works for most keys on the dulcimer. There's one key that's commonly used in bluegrass that has a little hiccup if you don't have extra frets, and that's the key of C. So we have a C chord, but the 4 chord is actually an F, not an F sharp in the key of C. And unless you have a 1.5 or an 8.5 fret on your dulcimer, you won't have a bar chord for F. So a lot of people sort of think, well, I'm just stuck. I can't play in the key of C unless I retune. But what you can do is play a partial F chord. So the notes in an F chord are F, A, and C. And there are A and C notes on your dulcimer. So a way of playing an F chord without an F note is to play 6 on the bass, 7 on the middle, 6 on the melody. It doesn't sound as full and pretty as it might if it had an F note in it, but if your dulcimer doesn't have a 1.5 or an 8.5 fret, it's a good way of getting around that F chord. So to prove it, we're going to play Rollin' in My Sweet Baby's Arms in C. So our first bar chord, the C chord, is at 6, 6, 6. The 4 chord is going to be 6, 7, 6. And the 5 chord is a G. So you can either go up to the 10th fret or down to the 3rd fret for that 5 chord. All right. So here we go. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms, rollin' in my sweet baby's arms, gonna lay around the shack till the mail train gets back. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms, oh, rollin' in my sweet baby's arms, rollin' in my sweet baby's arms, gonna lay around the shack till the mail train gets back. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Nice. Okay, so with bar chords, you can play along in D, of course. The key of E works. So E is a bar at the 1st fret. The 4 chord is A, and the 5 chord is B. You can play along in the key of F sharp. The first bar chord is at 2. And then the 4 chord is a B at 5. And the 5 chord is a C sharp at 6.5. F sharp isn't a real common key in bluegrass, but you can play it on the dulcimer. You can play in the key of G. So your bar chords are G at the 3rd fret. The 4 chord is C at the 6th fret. And D at the 7th fret. You can play in the key of A. We did that one together. The first bar chord is 4, 4, 4. That's A. The 4 chord is at the 7th fret. And the 5 chord is at the 8th fret. That's E. You can play in the key of B. So your first bar chord is B, of course, at the 5th fret. And then your 4 chord is E, which you can play at the 8th fret or the 1st fret. And your 5 chord is F sharp, which you can play at the 2nd fret or the 9th fret. So 2 or 9 for F sharp. The key of C is the one we just talked about, where your 1 chord is C at 6, 6, 6. Your 4 chord is F, so you can use 6, 7, 6. If you have a 1.5 and 8.5 on your dulcimer, you can play a bar chord at those frets for F, and then your 4 chord is G at 3 or 10. And you can even, not C, you can't play on C sharp, and then you're back to D. So D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C. 7 keys that you can play along with the 1, 4, and 5 chords on the mountain dulcimer in DAD tuning without any extra frets. You can play along in those 7 keys with a bluegrass jam, just using those bar chords. So that's a great thing to practice. Pick a song and just try it in all of the keys. Sometimes Amazing Grace works well because we're all really familiar with that song. Try it in all of the keys. Try something like Rollin' in My Sweet Baby's Arms, or a familiar bluegrass kind of song for you. So I've got a few minutes left, so I want to show you sort of the next step. After you can play bass chop, bass chop, bass chop, bass chop, and move between the 1, 4, and 5 chords in those 7 keys that you can play on the dulcimer, specifically D, G, A, C, and B are the most common keys played in bluegrass. So if you really tackle those 5 keys, you'll be doing really well at being prepared to play along. But then the next step is to learn more of your chord shapes up and down the fretboard so that you can start doing some like walking bass lines or alternating bass patterns, and to add some licks and fills at the ends of phrases. So I'm going to spend about 2 minutes on each of these concepts, just give you a quick little overview. For the alternating bass pattern, this is sort of like the guitar player often does. Well, they'll play a bass string and then strum the chord, and then they'll play a different bass string that's also part of the chord and then strum the chord. And so on the dulcimer, a way of doing that is by thinking of your chord shapes going in both directions. So I learned to call this 4-3-2, 2-3-4 D shape an X chord because I can shift the chord forwards and backwards. Every chord on the mountain dulcimer in DAD is reversible. So if I use that, I can play it one way, and then I can reverse it and play it the other way. And now I have an alternating bass pattern. If from here, I think of my 4 and 5 chords as bar chords, but also L-shaped chords with the highest fretted note on the bass string instead of the melody string, that gives me my alternating bass note for those chords. So if I start at 3-3-3 and then go to 5-3-3, 3-3-3, 5-3-3, there's my alternating bass for that shape. My notes on the melody string don't actually change when I move my bass note. And for A, the 5 chord, it would be 4-4-4 to 6.5-4-4. 4-4-4, 6.5-4-4. So if we go back to Rollin' in My Sweet Baby's Arms, I can do this alternating bass pattern while I stay on a particular chord. Let's try that. 1, 2, ready, go. Rollin' in my sweet baby, rollin' in my ready, go. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Gonna lay around the shack till the mail train gets back. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. my sweet baby's arms. Gonna lay around the shack till the mail train gets back. Rolling in my sweet baby's arms. One more. Rolling in my sweet baby's arms. Rolling in my sweet baby's arms. Gonna lay around the shack till the mail train gets back. Rolling in my sweet baby's arms. That'll take some practice, but you'll get the hang of it. Alternating bass by thinking of the shape that you're playing as reversible. That's kind of the idea of that one. And then the last little trick in the last 2 minutes that we are going to spend together is to use pentatonic scales to do a fill where the words stop. So where there's a space in the singing, we can put a little fill. So a D pentatonic scale, you can play at 0, 1, 2 on the bass, 0, 1 on the middle, 0, 1, 2 on the melody. You can also play those notes at frets 4, 5, and 7 in any string of the dulcimer. And we are going to build on the pentatonic scale next week when we talk about soloing in bluegrass. So if you start thinking about the pentatonic scale, frets 0, 1, 2 on the bass, 0, 1 on the middle, 0, 1, 2 on the melody, that's position 1. Frets 4, 5, 7 on any string, that's position 2. That's all D pentatonic. So I'm going to play Rollin' in My Sweet Baby's Arms one more time. And this time I'm going to add some pentatonic fills on the D chords where there are spaces in the words. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Gonna lay around the shack till the mail train gets back. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Gonna lay around the shack till the mail train gets back. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. Gonna lay around the shack till the mail train gets back. Rollin' in my sweet baby's arms. All right, thank you. I am Erin May. Thank you for joining me today for Bluegrass on the Mountain Dulcimer. Today we talked about accompaniment. I'll be with you next week and we will talk about taking leads and solos using the pentatonic scale. It's been great to spend the morning with you and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a great week. Bye.